My name is Barbara Afram, and I am the undergraduate student representative of the Black Psychology section of the CPA. And I am honored to present Marguerite Fleming today. She will be sharing more about cybersecurity for professionals, and that is definitely a very relevant topic. And we look forward to hearing skills and tools that we can use to equip ourselves and fight back.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara. I really appreciate your introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this issue, which is near and dear to my heart, especially for small and medium-sized types of organizations. Our real passion, cybersecurity is a very broad and deep field, but where I really feel that we have the biggest risk is with our small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits that don't necessarily have the foundations in place to be able to fend off a cyber attack and to be able to recover from one if it does happen, or when it does happen, we should say, right? Because it's not an if, it's kind of a when. So that's really our passion, is to work within the small and medium-sized business space and really support education and really, some basic kind of foundational programs or processes that you can put in place. Some are at no cost, and some things that we should just do in order to protect ourselves from the risk, because we know, and I'll talk a little bit about this shortly, but the risk of small and medium-sized businesses is far greater because we don't have the resources. If you are the bank, then you've got hundreds of people that you can call on. They're getting attacked a lot more, I must add, but they still have a lot of people. Most small and medium-sized businesses don't have that team to call on if they need it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what we're really about. I've been working in the technology field for well over 25 years. I work as a VCISO, which is a virtual Chief Information Security Officer. I've worked with hundreds of clients, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you about this really important topic. I'm very committed to working with people on, and there's lots of good reasons for this. Okay, cybercrime is an economy in and of itself. It's a $10.5 trillion this year. That's what the estimates are that people will spend either on paying out to criminals or recovering from when a cyber criminal comes into their system. I mean, it's exponential, right? It's going to double by next year. It's crazy how much we're getting hit and the impact of it because we're so dependent on our technology. So you don't have to go very far to see what's actually happening. And the introduction of artificial intelligence, AI, into the mix, like AI, what is it, right? It's information. It's being able to process information, and they gather all of this information together, making us all a lot more vulnerable. So whether or not it's looking at adversarial attacks based on, content and information, asking for ransom, basically encrypting your information so that you can't access it, threatening to release it to the public and saying, oh, if you don't do that, you're going to have to pay me. And that's you're going to talk about a couple of examples, just even local examples here in Canada that have just been going on, and what people have been doing to kind of support themselves in the middle of all of that. Okay. Uh, all you need to know about AI is that it is so as bad as it is right now, it's going to get worse because AI-based attacks are going to increase the ability for cyber criminals to launch attacks more quickly. So they're going to be learning, right? We use AI, I would say, for good reasons, which is to support your business. They use AI as a way to understand what the vulnerabilities are and be able to exploit those vulnerabilities faster. So they're using AI in that negative way, which makes them much more lethal than they have ever been before. So that is what's going on. It's quite interesting. The larger the organization, on average, we're looking at $455,000 per incident. It depends on who you are, but it's massive. It's big, big, big money to try and recover from this. And even from a small and medium-sized business, you've got to think, what would happen if you couldn't get access to your computer for a day, for a week, for a month, right? What would happen? Would you be able to survive? Would you be able to get access to your systems? Somebody took all that information, or um, what would you do? So those are some of the things I want to think about, and we're going to practice and do a little bit of that today. Because it's interesting to know about it, but then I want to start thinking about what will we do. Even today, I want you to really walk away with some thinking of, well, we can put things in place, and we should put some things in place, and I'm going to recommend some things that you do right away. But if it does happen, okay, what should we do? So I really want us to think about that. And I thought sometimes it's best to just jump in and take a look at a scenario of, an incident that happened with an organization, and think about what we would do if we were in the same situation. So if you opened up your computer and this is what you saw, okay? You open up your computer and all the computers in your office, um, this is what came up, right? That there is a timer, and it says, warning, all of your files are encrypted. You can't get access to anything on your systems. You can't get access to your passwords. You can't get access to your data. Um, you can't do anything with it. What would we do, right? And so MacTab Locker is just one of the um, type of I guess when you think of cyber criminals, think of them as like organizations, you know what I mean? Literal cyber organizations. So MacTab Locker would be one of their different products, okay, that they would send out there. So what do they do in this particular case? Um, they sent out some what we consider ransomware. So it's in an email format. Somebody clicked on a link. That link opened up access to the back door. And in that back door of the system, they were able to scan the system and find personal PII, which stands for personally identifiable information. They were able to find that. And in that information, they were able to lock it down, okay, and encrypt it. So in this scenario, right, late one night, several of the critical services suddenly stopped working. You found a ransom note, and at about 7 hours, 20 of your servers were encrypted. What would you do? So I'm not sure how many people have 20 critical servers in their environment, but just think about that. Just even think about your own environment. What would you do if you logged in and your whole office, all of your team, everybody that you work with who's connected to your system, everything was encrypted? Nobody could get access to anything on the system. What would you do? Just put it in the chat or just raise your hand and let me know. What would you do? How would you approach this? Who would you call? Anyone? What would you do? What would you do? Would you cry? I'm just okay. What would you do? Who would you call? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone have any ideas of what you would do?
I can say.
Yes, please.
Well, when you describe these things, I go, thank God I'm part of an institution because I would call the IT, although I don't think they're open at night. And I would panic. And when you describe these things are exactly why I don't want to go into business for myself, like ever, because this is what I'm afraid of.
Yes. Well, it is something to be very concerned about because it does happen, but you can put things in place to help mitigate and reduce the risk. But it does happen. It happens all the time. It happens regularly. A lot of things that we do not hear about, that don't make the, you know, 6 o'clock news. Okay. Many of these incidents, most of these incidents we'll never hear about, but they are happening, right? And matter of fact, Canada is one of the top places in the world that's getting hit because we have data. We have a lot of data. So even more so than the United States or other places, per capita, we're getting hit more because we don't have as many things. We don't, Canadian businesses in general, I'm not talking about the people here on the call, but in general, haven't invested in the same way that other countries have into their cybersecurity. So Okay, so you would cry, and I think that a lot of people would. Okay. Justine says you would call your insurance provider. Yes, that would be helpful. Usually, it's just like a car accident, right? So you'd call them and say, "Oh my gosh, this has happened. What do I do?" And they could probably give you some advice. If you have cyber insurance, they can probably support you. But typically, you want to have thought through this beforehand. So today, if you're going to have a takeaway, I want you to think about who are you going to call if something happens, right? And have some ideas. So in this particular case, okay, the company was asked to pay a ransom for access to get back access to their systems. Um, they decided that the amount of money that they were asking wasn't a lot of money. And they just said, okay, we're going to pay it because we need to get our systems back up and running. We don't want to have to call the FBI or police or RCMP or whoever. We don't want to have to call them because that's just going to, make it a much bigger deal. And what they do is, in this particular case, what they did is they paid the ransom. Let's say it was $5,000. Okay. So the people who got it, they were like, okay, I got my $5,000. Then they restored the systems. However, what what cyber criminals do is that they know now that you're a person who's willing to pay to get access to their system, and they haven't left your system. So within a week, they do it again, right? You come back in and you get the notice again. But this time they've raised the price. Now, what would you do? Anyone? Anyone? Besides cry? Okay. Um, yes, definitely. Thank you. You would call the police, call the insurance. Now, it is better to call insurance. In the United States, you're not supposed to pay ransom because it's considered a proceed of crime. Okay, it's a crime. In Canada, it's a little bit more flexible. However, you do want to involve, if somebody is asking you to pay them money to get access to your system, then you do want to get the police involved pretty quickly, right away. But some people, they're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take a long time. If I don't pay it, I can't get my back up and running. However, cyber criminals know that. And so I'm just giving you a little insight into how they think. And they're like, oh, well, this is somebody who's going to pay. So I'm going to do it again. So this is a real story, Canadian company. They paid after the second attack again. But this time they went through containment, eradication, and recovery. Um, so this time they said, okay, we don't want this to happen again. So we're going to take the data. We're going to just start from scratch, and we're going to make sure that we have everything back up and running so that they can't come back a third time. But they didn't accept an offer for continual security monitoring, which means to have somebody that will notify them if somebody's got back into their system. And then what happens with the cyber criminals? I mean, they're criminals, right? So they were like, hey, this guy paid me twice. Let me come back in and see if I can try again. And they did. Right? So there was another nightmare. And this will continue on, right? So, I think the moral of the story here is if there is a ransom requirement, please do call the police, call insurance. It may sound easy. One of the things that we know about cyber criminals is that typically they don't come up with a ransomware notice until they've been in your system for quite a while. They have been looking around. They have been identifying what the right information is, looking at your passwords. Um, if you feel that information that you have is secure in a cloud application or in Microsoft 365, or if you're using an application to hold all of your private information, what they do is they sit in the system and they capture your passwords, they capture your access, and they look for when is the best time to strike. In some cases, they also look at how much money you have in the bank or how much money you have going back and forth, like how much you're invoicing people. So then they know how much money that they can ask for. And so, a real life story of a client of mine, which was a law firm, and they unfortunately were in their system for months before they they took over the email account. They kind of replicated the email account for the senior partner and contacted the bank. And they told the bank that they needed to change to send money to another account. And so they were able to withdraw money from the partner's, oh gosh, bank account because they were acting as if they were the partner. They were able to duplicate the email address. It didn't happen right away, though. They were in the account for a while, and they made a decision what was the best way to try and extract money from the account. Now, they did that, and the bank was able to send the money, but it was stopped mid transfer because the bank is the one that came back and said, oh, by the way, can I just confirm that you wanted me to send the money to this location, okay, or to this account? So that it was because of the bank that they didn't end up losing all the money. And the bank had, so be grateful for our banks, right? They are doing that work. They are doing, they are protecting us to a certain degree. But this particular account, I mean, they could have lost tens of thousands of dollars because of that, because somebody was in their system for a while, monitoring, looking around, and identified which is the right way of attacking them. So just to, that's one of the ways it does happen. So I'm hoping that none of you are targets, but you could be, because that's what cyber criminals do. They're looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're looking for ways to make money. It's a business enterprise for them. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why I'm really so passionate about this for small and medium-sized businesses is because, and these are numbers from the Canadian Cybersecurity Forum, that 54% of small companies will succumb to closure within 6 months because they can't recover, right? So if you are down for a week or month, it's very difficult because you're going to lose your clients, right? Your employees may not get paid, or there's a whole bunch of things that happen on the back end. So you got to think, okay, what would happen to me if I couldn't operate for a week, for a month, right? I couldn't get access to my data. What would I do? Anyway, not to scare you, there are lots of good things that you can do. That you can put some things in place. So if you have cyber insurance, that's one of the ways that you can mitigate risk. I'm sure that they are offering it to you with your business liability insurance. It may already be there. I'm not really sure about your association, if you have association insurance. If you have your own business liability insurance, you can get a rider for cyber, and it's not very expensive. And it's just another way of ensuring that you have some additional financial support if you need it. But the cyber insurance companies are not the ones that are going to put the IT in place, and they're not going to be the ones that fix it for you, but they will soften the financial blow. And we always recommend that you have that. So what you're thinking, we get lots of questions about, well, how do these cyber attacks happen? What are the different ways? There's lots of different ways, but these are the most common ways that cyber criminals are getting to our information, getting to our systems. So you can think about software vulnerabilities, meaning like you haven't updated your systems. So if you've got old, versions of your software, they usually have updated it because there's a vulnerability in it. And so if you haven't done that in a while, then you're leaving yourself open. Okay, things like that. Credentials, weak passwords. If you're using the same password over and over again, and that gets known to the cyber criminal community, that's an access point for them. There is an insider threat, which we don't talk enough about, but it is a threat. If you have somebody who is an unhappy person at the end of the day, they may do something to the systems. And the ransomware, which we're familiar with, phishing. Is everyone familiar with the term phishing? The phishing with a PHISHING. And if you're not, it is basically an email link. Typically, it's an email link that they pretend like they are somebody else, getting you to click on it. And this continues to be a significant threat for businesses. I think it's like 20. I saw the stats, about 22% of all the attacks are still coming through email. So something that we need to know. that is one of their low-hanging fruit. This is one of the easiest ways for people to get into your system, is by someone clicking a wrong link. So all sorts of different ways to get in. And now with AI, it's just expanding. So the way that they can get in, not only through email, but they can get in through printers, they can get in through, if you're using Wi-Fi networks, like weak Wi-Fi networks, if you're at the airport, for example, and you're on their Wi-Fi network and you're accessing really sensitive information, people can also see it. People who are sophisticated enough can see what you're doing on your computer. So always, if you're at the Starbucks or wherever it is, just be very careful about what you're doing on their public Wi-Fis. There's so many different ways that a cyber criminal can get access, whether it's through your printers or through cell phones or through Wi-Fi. And so there's all sorts of ways that we can mitigate some of the risks and really protect yourself. So the key people, when we're thinking about cyber criminals out there, most of what we see are opportunistic cyber criminals. These are people who are in it for the money, basically. And they are looking for, the way that they usually do it is through data, ransomware, we've talked about it a little bit. The social engineering and the phishing is really the big one that you'll probably experience. You've probably all got those links in your email or text messages, right? Trying to entice you to click on it. And so there's some things that you can do just to educate yourself so that that doesn't happen, or, there are some other threat actors. These are usually going after fairly strategic types of accounts. So state-sponsored accounts would be going after banks, utilities, healthcare, things like that, things that would make a really big, impact on the broader society. That's a lot of what's happening for them. And then sometimes there really are activists. There's lots of activists out there who will go after people, whatever they may feel, right? I don't think that in your, organization, your industry, that you probably will have to deal with a lot of activists, but in some industries, it's a really big, significant issue, where they're not interested in money. It's actually much more difficult. They're not interested. You can't pay them, right? To, give them back the data or whatever. You can't pay them because they're really doing it for another reason, for another purpose. And so activists are a big issue for some people in certain industries, just to let you know. When you think about it, and I think everyone is here because they know this, that cybersecurity is the responsibility of you as an individual and as a small business owner, right? That Microsoft and Google and Amazon, et cetera, like, they are not responsible for your security, nor for your data, by the way. When we all click on that long list of, all the small print, all the fine print, whenever we're using their services, in that fine print says that they are not responsible for backing up your data or for your data at all. So what they're trying to say is, if you need access to any of your email or anything that you have saved, it is your responsibility to back that up. It's not theirs. So they may host it, and Microsoft and Google and so on, I mean, they have pretty good security in place. But if something were to happen, they're not taking the responsibility, if that makes sense. It's not your internal or external IT staff, right? So if you hire somebody externally, it's not their responsibility. They're offering a service to you. The responsibility is internal, okay? It's for you as a small business owner to take charge of your cybersecurity. Make sure you have things in place that will protect your business and protect your clients. And I think that's really the critical piece. So how do we get there, right? So, and I always love this quote: between the saying and the doing is the ocean. Like, how do we get there? And everyone is coming at this at a different place. Some people might be a little bit further along in their journey, and some people, maybe just starting their journey. So let's just take a look really quickly at what we consider the roadmap for closing this gap. Usually we start off with doing an assessment, just taking a look at where you are today, what you have in place or not, And then we start listing out, what is the priorities? What do you need to put in place? Because cybersecurity is, it's two pieces. It's a business piece. It's a human issue, and it's also a technical issue. So we can deal with some of the technical things first, and then we move into like the human being pieces, which is really about us and accessing information and making sure that we're keeping ourselves secure and keeping our data secure. But we start with the technology because we have to have that. So we do an assessments, which is kind of a gap analysis. Then we do a little bit on the technical side. Then we do the cyber pieces, which was a little different. We do the awareness piece, which is the human piece, and then we'll take a look at compliance and data privacy. Because in your industry, I know that there are some regulations around how you handle private information, and some things that I think that you should take a look at and be aware of. Sound good? Give me a thumbs up. Anybody still there? I see no pictures. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I had a question about access to the replay. As far as I know, yes. Don't quote me on that. So Barbara, are we able to get that? I think so. I think Devin said
Yes, we can.
that he's
Yeah, we can provide that. I'll distribute that to Helen, the section chair, and then Helen can share the link to everyone who's interested.
perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Helen, for doing that. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's just take a quick look about what we can do today. All right, so let's just take a look at this score. If you would like to, this is free of charge. It's something that we do, which is a cyber score. So if you want to go in, I'm going to put this into your chat, cybercarepro.com/cyberscore. Okay, so it's free, and what that will do is it will take a look at it. You don't use your Gmail, use your business domain. Like if you have a website, your business email essentially. And what it will do is it will go in and take a look and see if that business email has been compromised or if your system is compromised out on the dark web. All right, you want to see this. And this is really interesting information, free. It just sort of helps us to be able to understand a little bit more about where you are and what are some of the gaps. So I know when I did this I have different email addresses, but so my CyberCare Pro email address is pretty locked down, but an old email address that I had and my personal email addresses, there was actually quite a lot of gaps out there. It had been shared. So every time we put our name in to a system or we sign up for something, if those systems get hacked, okay, then your email address and your information is out there on the dark web, what we call the dark web. The dark web means that it's not the internet that we typically use, but it's sitting on a server out there that cyber criminals have access to, essentially. And that's kind of scary. And that happened to me. So not anything that I did on my own, but if you had the Costco MasterCard from a couple of years ago, if you had that, they had a massive hack about 3 or 4 years ago, if you remember. So they stole all of the email addresses, physical addresses, phone numbers for everyone who had a Costco MasterCard. And if you, they probably didn't say very much about it, but if you happen to get a new credit card in the mail, because they moved to CIBC, I think, it was because of that, because they were hacked. So what happened is that whoever that cyber criminal was, they had gotten into the bank accounts, they started contacting people, and they contacted me a number of times. I'm sure they did it with many other people. And they said, oh, by the way, I need to update your information. We've moved you over to this new credit card and I need to get your personal information, right? They were really, really slick. And it wasn't because I had done anything. It was because my information was breached on somebody else's system, okay? So just to let you know that is all out there. That cyber score is going to help a little bit. It'll help you know what is, where your email addresses and passwords have been breached. And so that allows you to be able to go in and action that and change the passwords, for example. Okay. One of the other things that I like to do, and if you want to do this right now, I'd love to, I put this in the chat. This is a website that's been around for a long time. It's called Have I Been Pawned? And that also gives you a little bit of a score based on your email address. It doesn't go in depth and it doesn't look at your website or whatever, but it just says, oh, well, have you been pawned? Has somebody used your email address for some other purpose? And allows you to be able to at least get a little bit of an overview. So it's kind of fun. Is anybody able to do that? Have I been pawned? So I'd love to hear if anybody's email address has been compromised. So Christelle says yes. Yeah. I would have to say that pretty much everyone has, because there's been so many breaches out there. So if you pretty much signed up for anything, or if your email address has been attached to things, you know, best practices are that we change our passwords on a regular basis, because a lot of these things are happening and they don't even make you aware of it. Sometimes they don't even tell you that their database has been breached. And with that database being breached, all of your information has been breached. Okay. So just to let you know that it's out there. And why do we care? Because obviously people can get access to your personal information, right? Oh, Barbara says your browser's not allowing you to access the website. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it's probably locked it down, which is good. Just shows that you've got some security, but I would try it on a different one. Have I Been Pawned has been around for a very long time, so it's pretty safe. But that's just a fun thing for you to do. So after you've done a little bit of a cyber score assessment, once we've had that conversation, and by the way, if you do that, happy to sit down and talk to you a little bit about where you are, where you want to get to. Then we look at some of the technical fundamentals, things that you have to have in place in order to be prepared. And so some of those things, and it depends on your configuration and how many people are in, if you work in an office, if you work at home, but you're going to look at your network, right? Because remember, we talked about how do attackers get in? Well, they can get in through not upgrading systems. They can get in through open doors, open ports in your network. They can access encrypted data if that data is not encrypted when you're sending it to different people. And so we see this that, since you're dealing with sensitive information, if you have to send some of that information in a different format, or you put it into a spreadsheet report or a PDF report or something like that, and you send it to someone, that information is no longer encrypted. Okay, it's no longer private, and people can't access it. So just to let you know that, and to be mindful of it. So looking at your networks, looking at your firewalls, looking at your data, making sure that you have anti-malware, ransomware, and anti-phishing software. Things like that are fairly basic to make sure that you have the monitoring. In the example that I had earlier today, they did not have monitoring. They didn't know that somebody had entered into their systems. And so the monitoring is really critical. Now, most people have like Microsoft Defender if you're using PC. So you have some kind of antivirus, but the antivirus isn't necessarily monitoring, okay? They'll tell you if something pulls up. However, it's not like somebody's watching it, if that makes sense. And you have to action it as well. So it is better than nothing. I mean, I use it, but I also have a monitored service as well that is looking out more broadly and remediating and actually taking action if they see something. The more sophisticated ones are actually doing things with your email as well. They're also taking a look at different types of emails that are coming into your email box, and they're automatically eliminating them or putting them into a quarantine if they notice that the email might be a kind of spam or phishing software. So Google does a whole bunch of that, but they're not always perfect. A lot of things always get through. Okay, but so there's additional controls that you can put in place. Same thing with Microsoft. Knowing that that is one of the top ways that people get into your system. So usually we do a little bit of an assessment here to make sure that you have at least what we consider the foundations in place so that, you know, you take care of that 80%, right? 80% of the stuff can be eliminated by just having some of your technical fundamentals in place. Then the next piece is the cybersecurity piece, which sort of adds on top of it. Why do we want really good passwords? Well, because we know that our passwords have been compromised for the most part. Many of our passwords are out there. So we want to have a way to have really strong passwords. And so you can use a password management tool. Maybe some of you people on the line are already doing that. But it's really a strategy. What are the passwords? How are we going to back up data? Who are we going to give control to and for what kind of information at what time? And how do we take away access if somebody leaves or we're no longer working with people? You would be surprised, maybe not surprised, how many people have left organizations and they still have full administrative access into systems, you know? So really, really important to start thinking through that from a cybersecurity perspective. So we've got this technical layer that says, okay, our computers are taken care of, and then the cybersecurity layer, which will go a little bit deeper, saying how do we protect our access to information, access to passwords? Are we giving other people access into our systems, and how are we doing that? And how are we monitoring it? Okay, so those are the cybersecurity fundamentals. Many of these things are low cost, you know, things that we need to get done, but really, really critical. So if you have the technical and the cybersecurity, I mean, you've got that 80-20 thing going on right there. Cyber criminal will see that and they'll move over. They'll keep going, typically. So you've got that, you've got the technical layer, you've got a cybersecurity layer, and then we go into what we consider the awareness training. So we're going into the human piece of cybersecurity. It's for us to become aware and to stay aware of what's going on in the broader environment. I mean, everyone here is busy doing your business every single day, right? So cybersecurity isn't your number one thing that you do. The training is continuous. It sort of sends you updates every once in a while, just prompting you to remember to look out for different types of emails that may come in, or different types of attachments or links, or you know, different types of threats that will come in. Like, we as human beings are a barrier, right? And we are also a weak link sometimes. So it's for us to be aware and to keep up to date with these things. Not expensive, again, really, really important. And one of the things that we talked about earlier was about preparing for an incident, right? Starting to think through, well, what would we do if something like this? What happens if I leave my laptop at Starbucks one day and it has access to all of my personal information, all of my clients' information, everything's on that. What do I do, right? Now what? We got to think, you know, think through that. What am I going to do? How am I going to, you know, take care of that? How do I make sure that people can't get access to that confidential information that's there? And so preparing for an incident is just like anything else that we would do. It's kind of like you know, doing a fire plan or a health safety plan. It's something that we should have in our back pocket, just because we know that it could happen. And so you don't want to be in the middle of something like this and then trying to figure it out, right? And that's preparing for an incident is usually part of what we would be doing under the cybersecurity pieces. And then the last piece is compliance. And I wanted to put this in here because when we talk about compliance, it's a little different. Compliance and data privacy involve going to that higher level. So you can't really get to compliance until we have done both the technical level and the cybersecurity level. So compliance is really three disciplines, which is talking about data governance. What are we doing with our information? How are we managing it? How are we managing the risk in our organization? And how are we managing compliance to a regulatory standard? And that regulatory standard for most people here in Canada would be at the very minimum, PIPEDA, which is your Private Information Act. And then your industry may have additional regulations or guidance for you on how to handle private information, okay? So that's what we would do, but you can't do that without having some of the other pieces in place. So governance really high level is taking a look at how we manage, how on an ongoing basis, are we taking leadership? Are we keeping it top of mind? When we're doing our planning, are we including how we manage our information and manage our data as part of that governance? When we're looking at risk, it's taking a look at uncertain events or conditions and determining whether or not it's going to have a positive or negative impact on your business. And what should we do to accept, or do we need to mitigate a risk? And then the third, which is the compliance piece. I spend a lot of time here with just helping companies that have specific regulatory requirement or legal requirement to make sure that their data is secure, that we've got everything in place, right? That we can be compliant to that standard. So PIPEDA is a standard that I know everyone is required to adhere to. There's also other standards. There could be health information standards. There's a CAN Secure standard. If you are doing business in different jurisdictions, like you're doing business in Quebec or BC or Alberta, they have their own data privacy standards that we have to have in place in order to be able to adhere to their standard. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that there is such a thing, but there is. And again, in the US, it's a little different. In Europe, it's very, very strict. They have been doing compliance work for much longer than we have here in Canada. And they have a very stringent standard to do work in those different jurisdictions around your data privacy. So just to make sure that you're aware, that if you're going outside of Ontario and you're handling information, private information from people in different jurisdictions, that you have to handle it very carefully based on the law in that jurisdiction, which I'm sure makes sense to everyone. So that is it. Right? If you think compliance to cybersecurity is expensive, try non-compliance. Okay, we'll leave you with those parting words. And I just want to thank you, right? We learned a whole bunch of stuff today, talked a little bit about an incident, a risk, people getting access to systems. What do we do? Kind of a little bit of a roadmap on how to address some of that. And I am so excited, and I'm hoping you got something out of it. So we are almost done. And my question for you would be, did you get something out of it? What did you learn? And are you going to action anything today? Put in the chat and tell me.
Hi
Didn't learn
there.
anything? Oh, hi.
Hi. Thank you for sharing your expertise today. I do have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations for must-haves in terms of, let's say, small businesses in our context? That's most likely a private practice. Like, if we were to have like the basic kit of things that we would need to implement, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I do. I didn't want to make this a sales presentation for you. I just wanted to keep it at a high level. But if I go back here to the technical piece, I think that it depends on your situation.
Mhm.
But at the very, very minimum, you need to have anti-malware, anti-ransomware, and anti-phishing. Like that's just like not
Okay.
optional. Okay, you must. And have it monitored professionally. You're dealing with a lot of private information they take.
That's
So
right.
that is, I would say we can't actually do anything more until we are monitoring the data that's going in and out of the organization through your firewall. And again, depending on how big your office is, if you're sharing the network with other people, we would talk a little bit about your network and your firewall potentially, and the type of data that you have. So if you have a compliance regulate requirement, you also need to do the cybersecurity piece. Okay. So that would be encrypted passwords, making sure that you've backed up your data, that you do some access control. That depends, and each organization's different. Like if you've only got a very small team, that might not be really applicable. But if you've got a broader team, this is critical, right? Who can get access to what, when, and how are we managing it? Really important. If you are using mobile equipment, locking that down, okay? Especially if you travel or if you use mobile equipment in different locations, what does that look like? Now, and I'm not sure here if people are using a lot of vendors or if vendors have access to your data and systems, but that is the cause of some of the biggest breaches that have happened out there is through third parties that have access into your systems. Okay. So each person, would have a combination of these things. But to have this be professionally managed, to kind of put it aside, it's not that expensive. It's probably somewhere between $45 and $65 a month per person, per computer, per person. But having that taken care of for you, I think is critical, right? To manage that. If you need to, if you've got that compliance piece, the cybersecurity awareness, not expensive, $5-10 a month. It's
Yeah.
it's not expensive. It's just to get it done. Do you know what I mean? Per person per
Yeah.
month.
Mhm.
And then preparing for incidents can be a little bit more expensive. Important to do though. And then the compliance pieces are done. It depends on what you need. They can be expensive. That's where things can get a little bit more expensive because it takes a lot more time. So you're looking between 25 and 50 hour consulting hours
Okay.
to get a program in place.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was that helpful? Sorry.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we are, very much available if you'd like to have a conversation about that. Happy to continue that conversation with you. Matter of fact, we do have some special opportunities for the organization. And again, I was like, I don't want to make it a sales presentation. It's not, but we can certainly make it worth your while. Okay. So anyway, that's it for me. Is there any other questions? Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
We
Thank you,
have,
everybody.
sorry to interrupt, Nicole in the chat is asking for contact information.
Here we go. Thank you, Nicole. You asked it. I gave it. There you go. I planned it all. That's just okay. This is the way to reach me. I'll put my email address if that's okay in the chat as well.
Please.
I'm very willing to have a conversation with you. Please reach out. Like I said, I have a commitment to work with small, medium-sized businesses. We've made our approach very straightforward and useful. I just came from a cybersecurity conference this week, and you know what I mean? They make it. There is so much to do in cybersecurity, but we need to just start where we need to start. Do you know what I mean? We need to start at the beginning sometimes. So I'm grateful for that and I'm happy to help. Okay, and have a conversation even if it doesn't fit to do what we wanted to do anything together. It's okay. But that's really part of my commitment. So thank you so much, and thank you, Christelle, for your comment. I appreciate that. They do need to have this. Okay, and everybody who's a clinician needs to have this in place. You're dealing with some really sensitive information. And I know that each one of you would be very devastated if that information was ever leaked to the public or anyone got access to it, right? For any reason. And I know that that is your commitment. And so these are some of the things you can put in place to make sure that that doesn't happen for you or for your patients. So hopefully that was helpful today and
It really was. Thank you so
useful.
much, Marguerite, for joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this presentation.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you for inviting me, and happy to be a resource.